so today we're going to be talking about tech rules and specifically prepping your car to be able to pass tech. If you can't pass tech, you're not going to be able to drive at the track. Everything on this page or channel is going to be track related or getting cars prepped for track or modifications, but to be very specific, we will not be doing any street shenanigans on this page, unless it's my driveway, which my driveway is my private property, and anyways, we'll get into that later. Not that big of a deal. So, some things to note: if you plan on going to a drift day, you can go to 90% of the time, you can go to your track's website. They will have either a facts page, an information page, a rules page. Spirit Peaks Raceway is where we're going, so I went out and print out the tech rules, so I have them on hand here. What we're going to be looking at today: battery, lug nuts, seats, and steering wheel must all be tight. Seat belts and DOT or Snell approved helmets. No leaking fluids. They state in here that coolant is allowed. There are some tracks where coolant is not allowed. So if coolant is not allowed, what do? If coolant is not allowed at your track, you can use distilled water. It is the least likely to cause corrosion inside your engine, and then add a water wetter. What that does is it lowers the boiling point of the water. Raise the boiling point, so this way you don't have boil-off issues and steaming and overpressure and all sorts of different stuff. But in this scenario, since we're going to Spirit Peaks does allow coolant. Next thing we're going to be looking at is fire extinguishers. Every car needs to have a fire extinguisher in it, and you should probably have a fire extinguisher on track. So, you have a fire extinguisher. Is it any good? Couple things to look at. Is it rated right? So first things first is you're going to look at your rating, A, B, C, or ABC. There's also K, a couple others. It all depends on what it's going to put out. Spirit Peaks requires you to have an ABC fire extinguisher. Awesome, we got one right here. Is it good? Is it going to pass tech? No, this one won't. There is rust on the outside that could inhibit the actual usage of this particular fire extinguisher. It's also, if you look here, this gauge, it's not in the green. So what's that saying is it needs to be recharged. It can also be overcharged. If it's overcharged, it can be dangerous to handle. If it's undercharged, it's not going to give you the right amount of fire extinguisher chemicals inside. So you're going to pull this out, you're going to pull the handle, nothing's going to happen. So make sure your gauge is in the green, make sure that there's no rust and corrosion on the fire extinguisher, and make sure it's rated to what you need it for. Alright, so the next list of requirements: vehicles cannot exceed 4,000 pounds. So probably not going to be able to bring out your Ford F-250 unless you get prior approval, and that's going to have a lot to do with damaging the concrete. Vehicles cannot be higher than 8 inches off the ground from the lowest part of the frame. All they're saying there is they don't want you to risk rolling over. So they don't want you to bring out your side-by-side. They don't want you to bring out your lifted Cherokee that has a 2J swap and a handbrake. It's just, they don't want to risk the possibility of you rolling your vehicle over and hurting yourself or somebody else. Vehicle must be rear-wheel drive. Leave your mom's Honda at home, especially the minivan, unless it's rear-wheel drive and mid-engine and supercharged. Any items on the outside of the car, decorations or props, need to be approved by the staff. All that they're wanting really is that it's strapped and secured. We actually had a cone strapped down on the back of the truck on my old Datsun B210, and during a Halloween event, and they said it was good because it was strapped down. Convertibles require 4-point minimum roll cage or roll bar, bolted or welded in. So most convertible cars, they don't have rollover protection. Most early Miatas, stuff like that, they're not going to have that hoop behind the seat, and a lot of times that hoop behind the seat is just decorative. It's not actually it'll fold as soon as the car rolls over. And in this car, it's not a convertible, but we do have a 6-point roll cage, so taking the T-tops off or whatever, we're all good. All cars require a complete exhaust system, at least to the rear axles. What does that mean? So all they're looking for is that you don't have an exhaust coming out of your fender. It's not coming across the bottom and exiting before the tire. It just needs to come back to the back axle, right, the center of this hub, behind there. You can dump it down there, you can come out your bumper, you can come out your roof for all anybody cares, as long as it comes past the axle. All they're looking for there is that you have an exhaust that's going to quiet your car down appropriately in order not to piss off all of the neighbors. All naturally aspirated cars require a muffler. Please do not run Zoot headers. If you don't know what Zoot headers are, they're some of the coolest headers that you can run. You'll see a funny car where they have exhaust that comes straight down off of the head and then shoots up off the side of the car. Those are Zoots, not a catalytic converter and not a resonator. Those are not mufflers. All those do is a catalytic converter. If you want me to make a video on what a catalytic converter does, let me know in the comments. But a resonator, it reduces the drone of the exhaust. It doesn't necessarily quiet it down. It just makes sure it doesn't vibrate your car apart while you're driving down the road and shake your brain out of your eyeballs. Turbo cars are exempt from the muffler requirement. Why is that? So a turbo car, it has impellers and extinguishers, and when the exhaust gas goes through that and then out of your exhaust, this is actually acting as your muffler. It quiets down the car significantly. That is why when you put turbochargers on your LS, it's going to be a lot quieter than if you use a supercharger, because the supercharger is not muffling any of the exhaust gases. It's running off of a belt to put air into your engine. So if you have a turbo, you do not need a muffler. And here they're saying, we reserve the rights to request further noise reduction based on excessive noise. So if you have a massive 454 and twin turbo, but it's still loud as all heck, then they might reject you and tell you that you need to go put mufflers on your car. It sucks, but if you want to drive cool cars on track, you kind of have to have them set up. And then at the bottom, they're saying if you have a request, if you have a custom vehicle request, please email us with the description and pictures before showing up to tech. If you have some crazy gnarly build where you took Jeep, what is that? CJ7 or CJ5, and you did some custom modifications to put S13 front and rear subframe with a massive LS. I think you know who I'm talking about. You might not actually. Chase, you should check him out on Instagram. He's a tattoo artist now. Anyways, a vehicle like what he is building would require a heads up. They're not going to turn you away. It's set up the right way. It's set up professionally, and it is not going to roll over, but it might exceed that 8 inches just because of how the frame rail sits with the subframes. Who knows? It's not done yet. We'll find out when it's done. But email them, let them know what you got. Just don't show up with random cool stuff and think that you're going to be able to drive, because you might not be able to, or you might need to make some minor modifications before you show up. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. We're just going to make this checklist. I'll put it somewhere on the screen, and we'll just go down the list and get everything checked out. So first thing is battery. Battery needs to be tied down. I've seen people pass tech with zip ties, bungee cords, ratchet straps. If it works, it works. Just make sure it's tight and it's not going to go flying across the track. There's too many damn references that I could go into, but make sure it's tied down. I'll give you an example. So I got a rear mount battery, and I have it in this box here. Now we're going to take this lid off, and we have this strap, metal strap, that's bolted on both sides all the way through the chassis, holding the battery down. They're going to grab this battery, they're going to yank on it, they're going to see it doesn't move. That means it's tight. It's also good to have just some battery terminal covers. This will keep anything from shorting out. If a wrench flies in here or something, it doesn't ground off or do something crazy while you're driving. But black cover for neutral, red cover for your live, and you should be good to go for your battery. So lug nuts is pretty self-explanatory. All they're looking for is to make sure, I know this is a 4 lug, so I'm going to have one less than you. Saves me money, that's how I look at it. But they want to make sure that you have 4 lug nuts on 4 lugs. If you have spacers, they might not be able to see them, but make sure that your lug nuts on your spacers are tight and all there. We don't want those flying off or separating. Just make sure that they're all there, make sure that they're all tight. You don't have to torque. I'd recommend torquing your lug nuts. Next is going to be your seat. Make sure that when you grab it and you shake it, it's not clunking around. The best way of looking at it is all seats should have 4 bolts in them. All factory seat, not all factory seats, some have more, but typically factory seats all come with 4 bolts. Make sure whatever seat you put in has 4 bolts going either through the floorboard, into the mounting bracket. But biggest thing is make sure your seat doesn't flex. Make sure it doesn't chunk around. If it's going clunk, 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 then they're probably going to suspect that you only have 3 of 4 bolts in your seat. While we're already in here, the next one's your steering wheel. Make sure your steering wheel's tight. If you have an aftermarket steering wheel, they're going to have all 6 of these bolts. Make sure you got all 6. They're like 50 cents at the hardware store. You're good to go. And make sure that if you do have a quick release, that it is sturdy and not going to fly off. There has been cases where people have been driving and their quick release just flies off and then they can't steer anymore. Next up is seatbelts. Pretty self-explanatory. Do you have seatbelts? Are they mounted well, or are they zip tied to the floorboard? Mine are not zip tied to the floorboard. They are bolted. Don't worry. So seatbelts and Snell or DOT approved helmet. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. Doesn't have to be carbon fiber. Just make sure that it's got that DOT sticker down there. Next is going to be make sure you don't leak fluids. Make sure you're not leaking antifreeze. If you are, you're probably going to overheat all day and it's going to suck. Make sure you're not running out of oil. Otherwise, you're going to get a rod knock. It's pretty self-explanatory. Make sure your transmission isn't puking oil out of the rear seal or front seal. Make sure your diff isn't leaking out of the front case. You might leak some out of the vent hole on the transmission and the diff, but no big deal. If you're not sure if your car leaks oil, just get underneath it and take a look. You're going to want to get underneath it anyways, but that's going to be a part 2. Just, do you have oil drippage? I do, because my car's been sitting here for 6 months and it drops a drop of oil at least 3 times a day. They are not going to be so anal that if you have a little bit of oil drippage on the bottom of your engine that they're not going to let you run. They just want to make sure that you're not dumping fluid all over the track, because you put oil on the track and somebody else is going to get it on their tires and they're going to spin out and hit a wall. And you don't want to be responsible for destroying somebody else's, not destroying somebody else's car, but causing them to spin out and destroy their car, because nobody wants to wreck their car in general, let alone to a point because of oil on the ground. So next is going to be fire extinguisher. The biggest thing about the fire extinguisher is you mount it somewhere you can reach it. Don't mount it underneath the passenger seat if you're strapped in with a 6-point harness. If you have a ball of fire come at you from the firewall, then you're going to want to be able to grab that thing and try and put that fire out enough so you can get out of the car. That is not to put out a fire, it's to get you away from the fire. So make sure it's securely mounted, make sure you can reach it, make sure it's got a good charge on it. As you can, actually, I don't know if you can see, but my needle's in the green, so that means it's charged properly. It is an ABC, and it still even has the seal tag on it. So another thing is check the date on it. If it has an expiration date, make sure it's not past the expiration date. If it is, you can probably just go down to Cintas or something like that and have them inspect it, and they'll say, yep, it's good to go. And also make sure that there's no rust on it. So make sure it's good quality. And if it has an issue, just go down to Home Depot. You can pick one up for like $34 and you're good to go. And realistically, that's about it. Other than make sure your car doesn't exceed 4,000 pounds. It's not 8 inches off the ground or higher at its lowest point. Make sure it's rear-wheel drive. Any items on the outside of the car need to be approved by the staff. Convertibles need to have a 4-point or minimum roll cage. And if you don't know what a 4-point or minimum roll cage means, I'll show you from back here. So we have a main hoop that goes up above my head and back down. That mounts to the frame. So we have 1, 2, and then up here on the strut towers, 3 and 4. That's all a 4-point roll cage is. You don't need the crossbar, you don't need the harness bar, you can run factory seat belts. You just need to make sure that you have something in case of a rollover for a convertible that you're not going to snap your neck. And then if you're naturally aspirated, you have a muffler. Turbo cars don't need one. And it's an RB, so even with a 3-inch exhaust, it's still not that loud. And like they state here in the bottom, this is just a base. If you have something in your car that you know is unsafe, and fix it, just fix it. If you were to pull up and your engine mounts are torn and you open up your engine and it's idling and it's bouncing all over the place, they're probably not going to let you run because they're afraid that your engine's going to fall out of your car. Honestly, if that's the case, do some maintenance. But as for that, I think the list is done. I think we're going to pass tech. This is just part 1 of what to look for, how to prep for a track day. So we're going to get to going on part 2 now, because there's more than just passing tech to have a successful track day.